I'm going to talk about mindfulness for people with avoidant personality disorder. And actually, it's for people with like anything. I think mindfulness could be very useful to them. But people with avoidance generally avoid the mindfulness teaching classes. So I'm going to give it a shot right now. What mindfulness is a way to have an immediate distraction that's not dependent on anything being there. Like, you might not need to be distracted by reading a book or be distracted by talking to a certain person or whatever. You won't be dependent on anything else other than your existence in the world, basically, in order to distract yourself and hopefully stop recurrent thoughts. Because that is what the point of it, that's what it's supposed to be doing, is to help you to focus on current, actual, present now. And to stop ruminating, which is worrying about things that happened in the past, or stop projecting, which is trying to predict the future, but instead to focus on the current here and now. And one of the best examples I heard about this, of sort of the opposite of mindfulness, to show you how it could work, was somebody was describing getting a positive cancer screen, who didn't feel sick at all, had no symptoms whatsoever, and there was no difference at all between the time before and the time after they got the results, except that they knew that they were quote-unquote sick. And it really did affect every part of their life. They were instantly worrying about everything. And I'm not saying that they didn't need to then take steps to keep from getting sicker, but in reality, there was absolutely no difference. It wasn't like they fell down and broke their leg and there was a definite before and after. It was just, I know this thing that's happening that I wouldn't have known if I didn't have a test, which I can definitely relate to. So mindfulness is kind of trying to do the opposite of that, is to take all that stress and worry about the stuff that's out there that could be happening, that did happen. So if it happened in the past, you really can't do anything about it. It's happened. If it's going to happen in the future, you don't know. Weird things happen that stop everything cold. And some of them are good and some of them are bad. But really, truly, you can't really 100% predict the future. And if you can, hello, you need to send me some lottery ticket numbers. And I know that's the joke that everybody says, but that is the truth. That is simply reality. And even if you know definitely something's going to happen in the future, you don't know for sure what your reaction to that will be. And if you work on it, then maybe something that you in the past would have reacted in an incredibly negative way, you might learn to react in a way that's easier on yourself. Okay, so that's the point of what mindfulness is. And how to actually do it, they talk about it all the time. It's completely, like, the most basic thing is, and it's really annoying, and this one didn't work for me, but this is the most basic, it might work for you, is to all of a sudden name 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things you can hear, etc. I'm missing a couple of senses there. Taste and smell. I guess 2 that you can smell and 1 you can taste. That will be enough to calm people down if they're not in some sort of rumination cycle or something like that. If you're just suddenly like have a spike of anxiety, that might work. I think that's really basic. And I think that that's, for average normal folks, that can really work great. And people with avoidant personality disorder, they're not average folks. So, yeah. So basically, instead of doing this listing thing of, oh yeah, there's all this stuff, I'm doing an inventory of the world. What was more effective for me, and does seem to be more effective even though it's like next level up, is to really, truly pay attention to something and focus your energy on it. For example, right now, I'm leaning against a log. It's a fallen tree. And it's been raining, and it's sort of cold and sort of wet under my hands. And I can feel this, on my fingers, and I can feel it in the ball of my palms, but I don't really feel it in the middle of my palms, and I don't feel it anywhere but on the tips of my fingers because my fingers are raised, and it's damp. It's definitely damp, but it's not so wet that it's sinking into my skin or dripping. It's cool, but it's not cold. It doesn't hurt to leave my hands on this wood. I mean, okay, I'm leading you through this. And that probably sounds ridiculous. But again, I trained for this, and I took 2 classes on it. And I spent 6 months in a type of therapy where every single session, which was twice a week, we would practice it. So it's kind of second nature to me to do this now. Plus, I'm not stressed. And it's a lot easier to do when you're not stressed. But I put this camera up here because there's a lot of things to look at, and there's a lot of things to hear. So maybe I'll give you a little bit of time to practice exactly what I'm saying. Focus on something, or even better, if it's something in your own space where you are that you can actually feel or taste or smell or, see yourself, touch yourself. That sounded bad. But you can actually, physically interact with it. Being able to see works. The more physically you can get your body involved, then it's better. So if you like touch something. Anyway, go ahead and give it a shot for a little bit. Okay, I won't stress you out by keeping that going much longer. But that is the basics of how you do mindfulness, is describing something and putting as much of your energy on it, because this is the other part of it. And I think I'm going to make more videos and really think about how to do them. But pay attention in retrospect, think back on it. And I didn't tell you to do this ahead of time because then you would have not been able to do it at all. But if you were actually focusing on something, like the sound of the water, or I'm pretty sure you can see that the actual sunset is happening, or any of these plants or whatever, or the dogs or the birds or whatever it is that you're paying attention to, or whatever's right in front of you, I would get stressed out while I was driving, especially to like appointments and things, and I would feel the bumps of the road in the steering wheel through my hands, and I would pay very close attention to how is, this is stuff you normally don't pay attention to. Feeling those bumps every time I would go over one. Now I'm paranoid about it. I'm always thinking the car's going to fall apart because I did this so many times. But that's what I would do, is I would pay attention to the steering wheel and feeling the bumps in the roads, and like not really like counting it, but more like, oh, that was a big one or that was a small one, in order to calm my anxiety when I had to go to an appointment. And it would work. I would be focusing on that instead of focusing on, oh my God, the last time I saw this person, this messed up thing happened. Or, oh my God, I'm going to see this person and I'm going to say something stupid, or I'm going to hear bad news or whatever. I wasn't paying attention to that for the 2, 5 seconds, 10 seconds sometimes, that I was focusing on whatever physical thing, your feet in your shoes. I hear that all the time, which that one doesn't really work for me. But that's another one that's really common. How do your feet feel, touching the ground, feeling your shoes, feeling your socks, whatever it is. That one's famous, sort of. And in the process of doing that, you just like give your brain a little hiccup where you're not thinking about whatever terrible thing is that's going through your head. You can just sort of give yourself a break about it for a second. And that's the point of mindfulness, is to put a small reset button break in the thoughts that you're having. It probably won't last very long at all, but it will probably be enough of a breather that you can realize that whatever crazy thoughts, I'm sorry to use that term crazy, but I mean crazy as in wild, as in, they're racing thoughts in your head. Whatever those crazy thoughts are that you feel like are going to take over your life, and you can realize that they aren't going to take over your life, that you can control them, even in a tiny bit, even if it's just to stop them for 2 seconds. And that alone, for me, gives me like enough of a breather that I can keep going. And then it also resets my brain. And again, I'll talk about this later, how to use that to reset things so that I can really look at my thoughts sort of outside of my thoughts and not get pulled in. And that is the second big thing about mindfulness, is to really analyze what you're thinking and why and how, and to decide which kind of thoughts you want to put your energy toward. Anyway, so that is like the basics of mindfulness, and again, it takes a lot of practice. It's not hard, it's just weird and different. And any time that you do something that's different and weird and you've never done it before, especially if you have expectations attached to it, it's probably going to be really difficult for it to actually do any good or stick. But you know what? If what you're doing is trying to do mindfulness and you're focusing on, is this going to work or not, in a way, that's better than whatever racing thought is going through your head. Unless you're using it to beat yourself up and say, I'm not doing it good enough. And I'm telling you now, I did it at least 9 months before it really started to click. Or at least before I noticed it. I think it was clicking a lot before that, but I wasn't realizing what it was doing, and I didn't realize what the point was, because everybody's like, ooh, mindfulness, isn't this great? But they don't tell you why or how it can be effective for you, what the point of it is. They're just like, oh, it will be great, because they don't remember how bad it was when they started, and they don't remember or haven't had the experience of really needing it. It's more like they're like, oh, I'm just going to mellow out right now. Okay, that's great. Yes, it does that. It can be great for that. It's also really fantastic for if you're stuck somewhere and you're just stuck and you're bored and you've got like 10 minutes before you got to do this thing and you got to stay there and you don't have your phone or whatever, you know, doing mindfulness games